Hi, welcome to the Corner of Knit and Tea, episode 391. My name is Laura. I'm also known on Instagram and Twitter as Fluffy Kira. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, which is where you'll find this episode's show notes, and every other episode's show notes. And I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea, where you can find my handspun yarns and my knitted patterns. Whew, it's like I haven't done that 391 times before. So, hi, how are you? It is Monday, September 12th. Monday, September 12th. Wow, I'm just batting 1,000 here. I hope that you are kicking off a new week, that you don't have too much hard stuff in front of you, and that you will find some time for crafting. I also hope you had a lovely weekend past. It has been really delightful here in Kansas. We are having what I call our few weeks of gorgeous weather. The temperatures have been really, really lovely. They've been in the 70s and 80s Fahrenheit, so much cooler than the summer temperatures in the hundreds for us. It's been breezy, it's been cool in the mornings, and you can definitely tell that the seasonal change is on the way. We haven't had super cool temperatures yet, but you can tell that they are coming. We may still have a good hot weekend to come, but I know that fall is on the way, and of course that kind of just piques my crafting mojo and gets me excited for all the woolly wonders that I get to wear and craft. So I hope that you are doing well, that you are staying healthy. So far we've managed another week in the household, not catching any of the ick. Of course Wes just had it, but we're hoping not to get it, and we are taking all precautions. So let's start with the tea today. The tea itself is not new. I am drinking the Downton Abbey tea blend, the Estate blend. It is Earl Grey black tea with vanilla. It is from the Republic of Tea, and I believe you can still order it. They have a few Downton Abbey teas. I like this one. It's just kind of a basic black, but it's also got a little bit of bergamot and a little bit of vanilla. I do, however, have a new mug today. So the last couple weekends have been so absolutely lovely. This says The Bean Coffee and Cafe. The last couple of weekends have been absolutely lovely, and on Saturdays my husband and I have taken his motorcycle out. And what we love to do is drive around on the motorcycle, stop for food, stop for ice cream, stop for coffee, you know, just kind of be out and about. And the weather has been so lovely that we've taken kind of extended rides. And The Bean is a coffee and pastry shop not too far from us, about 20 minutes from our house. And so when we went out on Saturday, we ran a couple small errands, and then he went ahead and took us for a ride, and we ended up having coffee and pastries. And they had such cute mugs. I'm not even usually into like pastel colors and gold foil lettering, but for some reason it just got me and I wanted a mug. And my tea is delicious in my brand new ceramic mug. I also like supporting local to us shops, particularly shops that are not chains. There is nothing wrong with Starbucks coffee, and I am not going to say anything about you if that is your preference, but I also like to find sort of hidden out of the way gems and local to us, and this is on like a little main street in a town that's about 15-20 miles west of us, and so I like supporting them. So having a mug is lovely. Anyway, I hope that you are doing well. Let's talk about the stuff that I did this week. Last week I showed you so many projects, and I had finishes and starts and all kinds of things. And this week I feel like things are a little bit more boring because I have been working on projects that I've had in progress for a while, which is probably good. And I also realized that we are a third of the way through September already. I know, how did that happen? And if I want to finish anything by the end of September, and I have 2 projects slated for finish, I really better stop fooling around and buckle down and work on them. So, the 2 projects that I'm working on and hope to complete this month are a sweater for my nephew. I have been talking about this for a while. The pattern is Crozone by Lisa Chemery, who is Frogginet Knits. It is serving as a basic top-down raglan sweater for my nephew, upon which I am going to duplicate stitch some Super Mario Brothers figures. The pattern itself is written with some striping and some other details, and I am sort of omitting that and making it a very plain sweater. I have no issues with the pattern whatsoever, other than the fact that I don't seem to be finishing it fast enough, which is totally totally my fault because I'm not working on the knitting. But I am now to the sleeves, and I have a good part of sleeve 1 done. Of course, my optimistic self had said, oh, maybe I'll have the sleeves done next week. No, definitely not. But I am going to make myself work on them more this week. So here's where I am at. I showed you this last week. Not a lot of change other than the fact that I have the sleeve most of the way done. So I probably have, well, let me look at this. It probably needs to be just another inch or 2 longer before I start the, if I had to get, I'm probably very close to starting the ribbing, if I had to guess, but so I'm getting there. I feel like one more night and I should finish the first sleeve, and it took me, I think, 3 sessions of working, because I was working on them during midnights and stuff. So definitely something to continue on in working, and hopefully by next week I will be done with the knitting. I really, really hope that. I'm going to try and maybe make this tonight's project to finish and then see if I can fit in the whole other sleeve by next time. Then I'm going to wash the sweater and dry it. I did select a yarn. I'm using Dream in Color Classy. I think I have I do. Dream in Color Classy, which is their worsted weight. It's 250 yards for 4 ounces, and it is absolutely lovely, and technically it is superwash. While I generally, for myself, don't even put superwash through the washing machine, you can do it, and I choose to knit in superwash for my sister because the last thing she needs is to hand wash children's sweaters. So I always select something that can be machine washed. Yes, I know the sweater will probably wear better if it does not get machine washed a bazillion times. However, I'm also making sweaters that fit the kids at their age or right around their age. They're not going to last more than a year or 2. So I really don't think the culprit is going to be that that it's going to meet its end in the washing machine. And I really feel strongly about making things easy care, because my sister has 2 kids and is running around all the time. And while she understands beautiful knitwear and how to care for it, I do not want her to have to constantly hand wash things. So that is what I'm doing here, and of course, because I send her superwash things that are meant to be washed in the washing machine, I always wash them in the washing machine at my house first before I send them to her, because that way, if it's going to get ruined, it's going to be on my fault, not on her fault. So I will wash this and dry it before I do the duplicate stitching, because I think that will give me the best canvas upon which to duplicate stitch. So my hope is that the sweater will be finished next weekend. If I can finish it before Sunday, I could even put it in the washer with the darks when I do laundry Sunday morning. And then on Monday, I could show you the finished sweater ready for embroidery and maybe do the embroidery that week. So I have plans. Let's see if I stick to them. But I did make progress. I knit almost a whole sleeve this week. So I'll be working on that. And just to be clear, I am alternating skeins. I am using needle sizes 1 to 2 sizes smaller than called for in the pattern. That is because of my gauge, so that I can get gauge. I have measured, I am getting gauge. But other than that, I am basically knitting the pattern as written, other than omitting the stripes. So that is a work in progress, and I hope you'll see the end of that soon, and I can't wait to get to the embroidery, the duplicate stitch, because that is going to be the most fun part, watching the pattern emerge. And I just, you know, you see a project in your mind's eye, and I think it's actually going to be okay because I don't have to freehand any of this. I actually have a chart I'm using. So I think it's going to look quite a bit like I can see it. So I really hope that's the case. If I have to come up with it, that's not how it's going to look. But I'm pretty sure I'm good to go on this one. So the second project that I am working on is a fingering weight cardigan. Fingering weight cardigan, which is a great document. I think my mind is still on work, which is what I was doing right before I started this. Which in my mind is a great garment to transition between the seasons, as it's still a little warm, not quite cold enough, and depending where you live, you may only need a fingering weight cardigan any time of the year. So I am knitting Mayma by Megan Nodecker, who is Pip and Pin, and I believe I was able to find the pattern outside of Ravelry, and so that will be linked in the show notes. Again, just as a reminder, I keep my show notes safe for anyone who can't use Ravelry, so all links go to non-Ravelry pages, and if it is not linked, that means it's only available on Ravelry, and you are welcome to look it up through the pattern name or the designer, and you'll find it there. As for my personal use of Ravelry, I try not to buy, I try to purchase patterns from sources outside Ravelry, but of course I have been on Ravelry for a long time, more than a decade, and so I have lots of patterns that I have in my saved library, and so sometimes I do use those patterns. Also, I don't necessarily select all the patterns for the samples that I knit, so any of those may come from Ravelry as well. So, the sweater is Mema by Megan Nodecker, who is Pip and Pin, and it is a basically fairly simple top-down raglan cardigan. The detail that it has honeycomb stitch on the front and back panels, and then the sleeves are plain stockinette. So I am knitting this in Zen Yarn Garden super fine fingering, which is 90% super fine superwash merino and 10% nylon. I always misspeak about that, and it is in the colorway Party Time. So again, this is Zen Yarn Garden, and this is one of their gorgeous speckles, and I'm going to show it to you on the stockinette section just because you can see the colors. It's got red and yellow and a dark blue, so it's kind of primary, but then it's got kind of a turquoise or aqua in there, and that just lightens it up and makes it feel super fun. The background is a cream color. I think it's just the natural that they dye on. So you can see that is the stockinette section. The other part that you can see is the honeycomb section, which looks really great. And the way they do the brioche knitting on this one is pretty simple because you're basically only working brioche stitches on 2 out of every 4 rows, which is kind of interesting. I haven't seen it done this way before, but it really makes kind of a fun pattern, and I can't wait to see this blocked out. It's super squishy and lovely. And I have made progress, even though it doesn't really look like it. I am approximately, I think, about 10 rows away from dividing for the sleeves, pulling the sleeves off and the body. And of course, these are the longest rows because when you knit a top-down raglan sweater, those are the longest rows as you're struggling to go around the widest part of your upper arm as well as the body. So I am pleased. I definitely want to get moving on the body this week, so I need to do my 10 more rows so that I can separate off these sleeves, and then I can work on the body, and that will give me about 200 less stitches. So I feel like the rows will go much faster at that time, and actually I guess at that point I will be brioching around the entire body, which is nice because I will just have one stitch and I won't have to worry so much about the stockinette sections in between, and that also means that I won't have to purl the whole stockinette section. So I will, well, and I guess then I'll go back and knit the sleeves in the round, so it'll just be knit. So that's kind of exciting, things I should have known, but I'm kind of realizing as I'm talking to you. I am knitting the size large, which is the 3rd or 4th size in the pattern, and the medium is usually like a 38 to 40 bust, so this is a little bit more, and it's not super fitted, and I know the sleeves in particular are a little oversized compared to the body of the cardigan. So by next week, I hope I will be able to show you something that looks a little bit more cardigan-like, but I am keeping on going with that one. I'm knitting it on a US 4, which I think is a little bit smaller than the needle size called for. Again, that is just my gauge, and I am following the pattern perfectly. And I think maybe last week I talked about how I had gotten stuck on this project. When I went back and pulled out the row, it was super simple. I had forgotten one set of paired increases around a raglan increase, and so I just went back and added those in, and then I was on my way again. But because it was a paired raglan increase, I ended up with the wrong number of stitches in 2 sections, and I was like, how did I do that? But it wasn't, I had to pull out maybe half to 2/3 of a row, and that was it. And then I went back and counted and looked very carefully, and I was like, oh, I just missed those raglan increases. I can fix those right now and we'll be on our way. So it actually was not as bad as it looked. I did put it in timeout for a couple days because I was like, I can't even deal with that. But it did not require a lot of brain power. So that was a good one. So the only thing that I cast on this week that I probably shouldn't have, but I did anyway because it was sitting there and it was wound and ready to go, was I cast on one more hat. So the hat that I cast on is, it is called the Hazelnut Hat. It is by Alyssa Gilbert. It was one of those patterns that I downloaded at some point into my Ravelry library, and when I was looking for another hat to knit, because I didn't want to knit the same hat over and over and over again, I wanted a little something different, it was in my Ravelry library and ready to go. So I will put a link to it. Hopefully she'll have a pattern off Ravelry. My guess is it was a pattern that was offered free at some point, and I downloaded it into my library. I might have paid for it, I don't know, but anyway, I am enjoying the knit, and I am using some handspun. This is some handspun, and gosh, I don't remember what it is. It's actually softer than I would have given it credit for. It might be Norwegian wool. And I can't remember who dyed it, but it is in blues and grays, and it is just really kind of a tea leaf blue ocean with a little bit of gray in it, and I'm really liking it, and the hat is coming out fabulous. I thought it was a bulky weight, but then it really is knitting up at more of a worsted weight. There was a lot of air in it, so compressed, it's really knitting up at more of a worsted gauge, and so this is the hat that I have so far. The reason that I picked this one is because handspun tends to be a little stripy and a little, it's got lots of texture and interest, and I often find that if I pick a serious pattern, that the pattern gets lost in the handspun, and so really what I wanted was something simple, and these are just alternating sections of stockinette and garter stitch, and so it's a 2-row pattern repeat, which is perfect because I don't have to think about it, and I am just continuing to knit. It's got a twisted rib brim, which makes it nice and squishy, and so I am getting towards the point where it is time to start my decreases. I probably want to go for another ½ an inch or so, and then my goal is to just use up this, is to do it right so that I either use this up or so that I have enough left to do a pom-pom on top. This will be going to Wool Aid because they accept and prefer heavier weight garments that are pure wool. It can be superwash or not, and I think this is going to be a really warm, toasty hat. I don't know if it's soft enough that I would want to wear it as a cowl, but I think as a hat it will be okay, and worst case scenario, I can put a another brim inside. I can just pick up and knit another brim on the underside. I'll have to try it on when I get done and see what I think, but I am happy that this is going on. This was another one, another skein in my year of trying to use up old handspun and scraps, and I just kind of got on a hat kick. I do think this will be my final hat for now, and that is for 2 reasons. The first is that I really need to concentrate on these 2 sweaters and get these 2 sweaters done this month, and so my plan is to try and work almost on nothing but those, although I do have one more thing I'll show you, and try and finish those before the end of the month, and then if I do, I'll go back to knitting for charity. So I have done a bunch of new hats that I can send off. The second reason is because I was listening to a podcast the other day. It's not out yet. Technically, it's my work podcast, but I was listening to a podcast with, we just did an episode where we interviewed Austin Rivers, who is the founder of Knit the Rainbow, which is a charity in, I talked about it last week a little bit. It is a charity that started in New York as a way to help LGBTQIA individuals or LGBTQ plus individuals who are facing houselessness. And it aims to provide them with warm garments for the season. And when talking to Austin, my boss was asking, you know, what kinds of donations are you looking for? And he said, you know, we love hats and scarves, but the one thing that we almost never get that we really could use is socks, followed up by mittens. He said, everybody loves knitting hats and scarves and we will never turn them down. They will always find a home, but most homeless shelters or resources for people who are facing houselessness find that they almost never receive underwear or socks. And I don't know if that's because people wear them out or they end up gray, or, you know, they don't have gently used items to donate, because while some clothes work that way, usually we wear our socks and underwear to death, at least I do. By the time I get rid of them, they have holes in them and they're gray from being, they're no longer white because they've been in laundry, and I don't donate them. Sometimes they have holes in them, you know, those kinds of things. And he said, you know, of course, knitters and crocheters don't make underwear, but they do make socks. And so one of the things that he said is that they would really appreciate if there were knitters who could knit socks and, you know, mittens or fingerless mitts, if they would consider donating those instead. And it was kind of like an aha moment for me. I love knitting my scrappy hats. I love going through my stash and pulling out little bits and bobs and using them up. But the truth is that I am a quick enough knitter that I really should be knitting some pairs of socks and mittens to donate. So actually, speaking of yarn, this weekend is the Kansas City Yarn Crawl, and so one of my goals going out is going to be to find a few skeins that I can purchase that are either DK or worsted weight and will have enough yardage that I can go ahead and knit some cozy, squishy socks for the winter weather, or some mitts. So I don't know if I'll get any of those done this month, but my plan is to go ahead and work on them in the next few months. And if I get them out this year, great. If not, they will go out with next year's batch. But it does give me something to think about. I definitely won't stop knitting hats because I don't always love the look of scrappy hats and mittens as much as I do a scrappy hat where you can kind of stripe it in and it looks almost intentional. And I don't know if I do that in mitts and can divide it even. I don't want it to look ragtag, because just because I'm donating them doesn't mean I want it to look like it was the leftovers at the bottom of my stash. I just enjoy using those bits and bobs up. So, hat knitting is not over forever, but it is to be continued, and I will be trying to work through some of my stash. It also gives me a really good reason to go through my sock stash, my sock yarn stash, because as much as I would love to, I might go for knitting DK or worsted weight socks just because they knit up faster and they're cozier for the winter. But I have a lot of sock yarns in my stash that are bright and variegated that I bought ages ago, and I don't really know what I'm going to do with them. And so some of them could just be turned into socks over the course of the next few years, and I could donate those. So it also gives me access to a variety of patterns that I would love to knit, but my feet are too small for. So I have very small feet. They are size 6 or 6.5. And so oftentimes when I find sock patterns I like to knit, they are 64 stitches or 68 stitches, and there isn't a really good way to make them smaller, because I usually use a 56 or 60 stitch sock size. So I'm excited to go through and pull some of those patterns that I've bought over the years and pull some of my stash and maybe create some good socks to donate in the next year, because I'll be honest, my sock drawer overfloweth. And so creating some socks, using up some stash, and donating it to a good cause sounds good to me, as long as I can keep up with all my other things. So 2 sweaters first, then more charity stuff, and the only other thing that I'll be working on this month is a chicken. I just thought I would bring you the yarn. As I've mentioned in the past, I work for the City Girl Farm, which is a Kansas City art studio that is home of the original chicken footstool. If you have not gone and looked it up, you really should. I will try and remember to put a link in my notes. And each week I knit up some arty hand spun. I often do not spin for them because I am not great at a thick and thin spinning. It's definitely a little bit more art yarn spinning, but we have a lovely woman who spins for the studio and creates just gorgeous yarns, and this time she put together some grays and some blues, and actually it reminds me a little bit, not really this exactly the same colors, but it reminds me a little bit of my hat with a lot of the blues and grays in there. Anyway, so my plan is to turn this into pieces that will adorn a chicken footstool this week. So I think with 2 sweaters and chicken projects, I will have enough going on this week. I don't know if I'll get to cast on anything new, but I may just have to wait till October for that, and I do have a few plans for that. So that is the knitting this week. Let's quickly, I'm going to take a sip of tea. We will talk about spinning real fast, and then I will let you go. So I did actually have time to sit at my wheel this week. I did not finish a skein as I had hoped, but I do have the singles finished, which means it is time to ply. And hopefully I will get that done in the next day or two. My mother-in-law is coming for dinner tonight, so I don't know if I will get that done. But so I spun fiber from, and this is going to be really boring to look at because you can't even see the interesting parts because I was not good about the way I loaded it on my bobbins. So I spun some gorgeous fiber from Kim Dye's yarn. It was 75% Polworth, 25% silk. I believe. I know there is definitely silk content because I felt it in there, but I think it's Polworth and silk. And the colorway was Red Robin, and what I'm about to show you will not look like Red Robin. So this is, well, you can see a little bit. You can see a little bit of the bobbin on there with kind of a rusty orange color, which is what I feel like is the red breast of the robin. And then there are varieties of grays and browns, and there is just a touch little bit of purple in there. It is really hard to see in bobbin form because, of course, I stacked my bobbins very unevenly. I wasn't paying attention. I was on knit night and just kept spinning. And so each of these bobbins is 2 ounces. The bobbins themselves will hold 7 or 8 ounces, which is why they're so big. They are Acreworks bobbins for my mini spinner, just to give you a little bit of an idea. They are 3D printed and they are also collapsible. I cannot show you today, but I will bring one to show you another time. Well, I guess I can't show you. The deal is that the ends come off the ends come off the center stem, and so technically you can flat pack with just the one stem and then the 2 flat pieces. Normally I can't show you that because I don't want my spinning coming off the end so that it gets tangled. Anyway, so these are the 2 sets of 2 ounces. It will generally be a fairly muted braid. It's going to be gray with hints of orange and then a few sections of real rust. I spun it as a fractal spin, meaning I broke the braid in half. Okay, I did what I do as a fractal spin, which is not precisely a fractal spin. I fold the braid in half lengthwise and divide it right in the middle of that, and then I spun half straight through with no breaks, so it's got long repeats of color, and then I spun the other half I think I broke it vertically into 3 sections, so it was lots of shorter runs of color, and then I will apply them together, and effectively what that will give me is the colors will be kind of mottled, but it will vaguely sort of stripe as it runs through. So, and I think that's probably what I did here. And so you can see some of the ways that they stripe. They, sometimes the colors line up, a lot of times they don't, and you have little sections throughout. It just gives the skein some interest. So that is what I am working on here, and this one will go up in the shop. The last 2 braids that I have spun for the shop have been fairly soft and neutral. The one prior to this was Poppet, which actually it's sitting right there. I need to photograph it and get it up in the shop. I've been really bad about that. But that braid was kind of blues and taupes and whites and a little bit of purple. And then this one is lots of grays and a little bit of orange. So I decided to pick something completely on the other end and went with this gorgeous braid from Gritty Knits. I bought this wild bunch of superwash merino from Flyaway this year, so back in April. I'm not doing too badly on working through things. This is superwash merino and the colorway is Kaleidoscope, and it is just a riotous bump of color. It's bright and fun, and I don't know exactly how I'm going to spin it, but this is next up on the wheel, and I'm sure we'll make a fun project. If I get enough, it would make, because it is superwash, it would make great socks. It would also make great kid stuff, or stuff that you might want to wash more easily and not worry about felting. So I love the reds and the pinks, and there's a little bit of orange, and then of course there's tons of blue in there. So that's going to be a fun spin coming up, and then I will probably take a break for a week or 2 because I have some chicken fiber to spin up. As I said, I don't spin for them very often, but there is one particular chicken type where it requires a fairly consistent yarn, so I go ahead and spin for those. So I have about 2 pounds of white fiber to spin up. It's not very interesting, so I probably won't even bring it and show you. But I'll have a couple new braids going up in my shop between now and then, and hopefully another braid to show you next week. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope your week is off to a great start. I hope you're finding time to craft. My weeks have been busy. I've been working weekends, and there is never enough time to craft, particularly when fall starts and I just want to craft all the things. So I wish you a wonderful week ahead, and until I see you again, I will say as I always do, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye!